Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week where we peel back the curtain, call out some BS, and tell you what the establishment is really up to. That's right. This is the Hoodrat Strategist. Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. I am joined by my dear friend Luke.
What's up, everybody? I'm back.
Yeah, if you're a long-time listener, you know he was an on-again, off-again co-host for a while. Been gone for a minute, but he's back, and we've certainly...
I had to take a break.
Yeah,
I had to take a long break.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah.
Just swimming in all the corruption and... Just miserable news.
I had to forget about it by participating in anime trash.
Yeah.
So I traded one kind of trash for another.
Some Netflix therapy, as it were.
Yes.
Which I do the same thing. I mean, that's my nightly ritual. Unless I got other things going on, is in the day with a 40. And some Star Trek. Yeah, just be like, hey, that's the goal, fam. Yeah.
That is the goal.
Yeah, let's get through all of this absurdity and just start being a peaceful, more socialistic, spacefaring civilization.
A society that, maybe props up thinking about the human race is kind of a global thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Globalism gets spat out a lot. Like, it's a dirty word, but
Well, I think it's
it's one of those. It's one of those things. Like, you're talking about an ever more interconnected society.
Yeah, I think when you have to separate globalism from globalization. Yeah,
correct.
And a lot of people conflate those two things.
They're not the same, guys.
No, not at all. Globalism is more of a moral outlook. To say like no countries, no borders. Part of the reason that we are so insulated by a lot of the injustice that our country perpetrates. The drone strikes.
There's two big oceans in the way, man.
There's two big oceans.
Big oceans in the way.
And
almost three. I mean, South America, what's that? Mm-hmm. Like, we're connected by who? What? Yeah. South America, that's like Mexico, right?
Yeah. Just a few landmass, or just a few miles, and language barriers, and yeah, it's just right in our own backyard. We'll have decades of CIA interference, assassination, and regime change.
And a refugee crisis caused by drug cartels.
Yes, exactly.
Hey.
Yes. And of course, like all of those immigrants crossing the border. They're crossing for a reason, and guess what? A lot of it has to do with stuff we've been doing.
Welcome to the real world, folks.
Yep, and NAFTA, that's a good example.
Oh, yeah.
What it did to all of the Mexican corn farmers who were suddenly destitute, and what's a farmer to do? But, hop a fence or dig a tunnel.
Maybe buy a one-way plane ticket.
Yeah.
And just let your visa expire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. All right. We should probably
Let's
hop
get on
one of our topics for...
Let's get on this.
Our banter runs away from itself. Yeah.
Truly.
Right. So, I guess so I did want to talk about the CNN thing for a bit, but from what you told me, you just found out about this.
I literally just found out about this today.
All right.
Friend of mine on Facebook posted about it. I'm like, what is this? This is ridiculous. Yeah. I just started looking into it. And it is as ridiculous as I think it was.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on it, just initially?
Like, my initial thoughts on this whole story is, why are we attacking CNN for being good journalists? for once, like this, as overblown as it already is, the whole Trump tweeting that freaking video is sort of a cause for concern from an office which many consider, one of the most powerful political offices in the world. And like, I get that meme magic is real, guys, but Trump is now tweeting the same memes you used to like bash the left, and he's using it to bash journalism, and that's not cool. It's not cool. So it's not unreasonable to expect at least one or two people who consider themselves journalists, or are journalists in this case, to look into it and find out, wow, really, what is going on? And as much as I hate to see stereotypes be fulfilled, I hate watching people like just check mark off all the stereotypical boxes for the prejudice bingo, essentially. Like, yeah. I hate it when I do typical white people things, because it's absolutely terrible. I'm like, okay, yep, now I'm that white guy. Yep. It's the same thing when I see other people do it. I'm just like, you're that guy. Why are you doing the thing that people have been like putting together to make you look bad for literal centuries? What are you doing? But at the same time, you can't help it, because it's, at a point, stereotypes are true. But like, as much as I hate to see stereotypes become true, I am not surprised that the person who originally made or photo edited the video clip is a bigot, who is a person, essentially just an ignorant person to all of the other groups that happen around him.
For a little bit of context, so like, this dude created like little memes where it's like, here's all the journalists of CNN, like little stars of David on them, and
that got posted
some really
recently, actually.
Yeah, some really ugly Islamophobic stuff. Basically, this dude is an alt-right troll. It's, shorthanded. And but so, I'm actually, I'm a little conflicted on this, and I kind of came away from it with a little bit of a different opinion. So, my initial reaction, and I understand where you're coming from. It's a different thing when the president is sharing it. At the same time, like, the way I kind of took this initially was like, I think it was really a bit overblown.
Oh, it's absolutely overblown.
Yeah. They, like, CNN, like, wouldn't stop talking about this, and I think we talked on the show. I don't have very much sympathy for CNN. They're less a actual like journalistic source than they are a entertainment conglomerate, more or less.
You mean every single 24/7 news station?
Yeah.
Every single
much.
one of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I get you.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say why are we bashing CNN for doing actual reporting, because it is one of those things where, I mean, they're going to do it for their ratings because it's the story they've decided to latch onto.
Yeah.
And that's what's been keeping people tuned in. So, they're going to do the story that is making them money. Yeah. On the other hand, like, it is useless. It is a useless batch of reporting. It does not actually, all it does, it doesn't actually clear anything up. It doesn't actually further any kind of conversation. This whole story doesn't do anything.
No, not at all. Yeah. And, my concern from this is, they took a gut punch to their credibility's in the toilet right now after the whole yeah, and we talked about this a little bit more last week, and I don't really like Project Veritas. They've got their own crummy track record, but their little gotcha journalism with CNN, that was true, that was verified. That they, basically they had a couple of CNN staff talking about how they are like pushing the Russiagate stuff chiefly for ratings, and so there is that, and then.
Project Veritas wasted his time doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wasted his time confirming what everybody already believes.
Yeah, I mean, well, not everybody. I mean, you'd be surprised.
That's true.
Yeah.
I guess everybody on the right, which is, the people who are going to be watching Project Veritas the most anyway.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, because like you got some of that from Van Jones, and like Van Jones has been saying this for a while, so like that's not like, oh, he's the first guy was a producer, so it was a little bit more of a a scoop, as it were. But yeah, anyway, okay, I'm getting a little off topic here.
But anyway,
so my main concern though is, so Trump tweets this goofy GIF, which is pretty much par for the course. This is a president who's going to tweet stupid things.
We live in the darkest timeline where Twitter is actually coverable.
Yes, and granted, CNN, and we've criticized them before about how much time they spend, like when it comes to covering the White House. It's more like, do you want a summary of President Trump's goofy tweets while we try to take it as seriously as possible? Tune in to CNN. But,
tune in to CNN. We're not comedy. We swear.
Yeah. So, what this struck me as though is, so they go to the trouble of finding the guy who made this GIF, who again sounds like a real like. His POS.
He's not an outstanding moral citizen.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I found that really absurd and also really disturbing that the network would go out of its way to track down somebody who made this GIF, and put it in terms that, like, if you're out there and you're glad this guy got doxxed, which this is what that is, and if you're not familiar with that term, that's when somebody uses, excuse me, somebody reveals someone's online identity or reveals real-life details about them, because they have an agenda as far as, like, getting this person's stuff out there.
Yep.
For possible retaliation.
Big name doxing things that have been at least on my subculture radar. The doxing of Anita Sarkeesian is one of them. Mm-hmm. The doxing of a lot of feminist frequency writers and participants is one of them. Most of the doxing that I've heard about has been against female YouTube personalities who come under target for one stupid reason or another.
Yeah. And I have a lot of friends in the
and that's what this whole story amounts to. It's the same kind of stupid, unnecessary drama bait garbage.
Yeah, and it sinks, not that I gave, I don't give CNN much credibility to begin with, but it sinks them, to me, I feel it sinks them right to Donald Trump's level. It's like, if you criticize us, we're going to retaliate. And that seems like so unprofessional. And not only that, but, well, let me read a little bit. This is from their own article that they put up talking about this. And they mentioned CNN is not publishing I can't really say it on here.
Han A-hole Solo.
We're not publishing his name because he is a private citizen who has issued, and it should stop there. We're not publishing his name because he's a private citizen. And then, I wouldn't have had any problem with this. Like, okay, you Found the guy. This is kind of a stupid waste of your journalistic resources, in my opinion, but do what you will. But then it goes on to say, because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all of his offending posts, and because he said he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. In addition, he said his statement could serve as an example to others not to do the same. So again, this is for making a GIF of a CNN logo getting punched in the head. And to really bring it home, like why I'm angry and disturbed by that, let's flip the situation. Okay, let's say like me or Luke makes like a meme about, you know, Donald Trump getting punched or Donald Trump getting punched by, like, you know, say...
It could be as simple as a political cartoon. Honestly, I'm surprised that Donald Trump has not been going after the people who are literally paid to satirize him. They are they are paid to satirize drawings of him. They are paid to make fun of him. They get published in major newspapers. Like, seriously, political cartoons are the best memes.
Mm-hmm.
They are the best memes.
So, so let's imagine that this political cartoon that you make, that's criticizing Trump or criticizing Fox News. Let's make it more specific. That gets retweeted by, say, like Nancy Pelosi or, you know, even like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. And Fox News has a journalist find out your identity, fronts you, and basically says, you know, we have your information, and, you know, particularly like from the way CNN put it, it was conditional, like apologize and do this and do that, and we won't reveal your name. Now imagine like Fox doing that to someone on the left, which now there's a precedent for that.
True.
Yeah.
And I mean, this does just kind of sink down to yellow journalism. This is yellow journalism.
Yeah, exactly.
And we need, like, it's a good thing that independent shows like this one and alternative news media on YouTube, the Young Turks, even the freaking Ring of Fire, like these kinds of places are going to be the location that you're going to hear about criticism of the mainstream media. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like when they pull dumb crap like this. I mean, because they do, like, it's upsetting enough to know that the White House has an adversarial relationship with the press to the point where, like, they just aren't talking about what they're doing straight up.
Yeah, and, you know, this...
as bad as that is, as much as we need the mainstream media to be functional and to be able to criticize Washington and to call them out on their BS, it's just as important that we call them out on theirs. Because going after some dude, some guy who shouts into the void that is the internet, someone who's honestly not really worth the time or effort that has been put into this. That's not how you criticize Washington.
No, not at all. And if anything, like, you know, there's an article in the Huffington Post talking about how the journalist who did this digging is now getting death threats. And honestly, they poured gasoline on their own fire. You know, if you're trying to make it so that there's an adversarial kind of posturing between, like, you know, common folks and the corporate media, then what you don't do is literally go after the common, you know, even like this guy is uncommonly crappy, but you don't go after those people as individuals, because as much of a butthead as this guy is, he's, you know, they said he's like a 40-year-old like veteran, blue collar worker type.
He's just a guy who has video editing software and is sharing his opinion on the internet.
Yeah,
like honestly, as reprehensible as some may find whatever views he holds, guy's got a right to say them.
Yeah, and
like he's got that right. It's different, like, and it's different when the president says it, to be sure, because that is a troubling position for someone in that position of power to have.
And it's also like retroactive justification, because let's be really clear here. This journalist went after this guy because he made a GIF
because he
criticizing
made the video.
CNN.
Yeah.
The fact that he ended up being a racist POS, like that, all that really does is just provide CNN with a little bit of cover. It's like, well, you see, this is a bad person, so it's good that we went out of our way to blackmail him.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's that only catalyzes the right when they talk about mainstream journalists and the left slandering everybody on the right as bad or evil, and like it doesn't contribute to anything.
Yeah, and it reinforces those narratives of, like, you know, that the media establishment is against us. And yeah, it sinks down to Trump's level, because that's how Trump operates. You criticize him, you satirize him, and he goes after you. He does not take the high road. And that's exactly what CNN just did too. Somebody made basically a political cartoon about them, and they went after him, and they used the tweet that Trump made as an excuse to do it. Yeah. And, you know, again, like it like as you said
I don't
at the
think
beginning,
I don't think this story would have ever happened if Donald Trump had not made that tweet.
That's true. That is also very true. And, you know, this, just to bring it back to what you said at the beginning, again, you know, what this chiefly has to do is the fact that our president is basically a 5-year-old with an iPad. And what we really need to focus on, again, and the media has been doing this since he got into office, is him and his administration and the Republican Congress, and
instead of, you know, actual focus on what they're doing, and not, you know,
not this sort of bread and circuses that the president's throwing out there with his silly stuff. I mean, yeah, it is definitely extremely, like, poor behavior for the president to tweet stuff like that. But that's
we know
expected.
This.
Like we know
the
president's going to do stuff like
he's
that.
He's gonna do stupid crap like this. He's gonna continue to do it even after this is all blown up. I don't give it more than 2 weeks until something else comes out of Trump's tweets. Like one of my news cycles was dominated by the fact that Trump tweeted about Mika Brzezinski.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why is this this isn't important? This is people talking about, like, this isn't important. We know he's a sexist. We know he's a misogynist. We know that he will freely say terrible things about people he disagrees with simply because he does disagree with them. He's a bully. He's a juvenile bully. It's like, why is anybody surprised at this point?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is it news? It's not. It's not news. Stop reporting on it. That's an accepted reality. That if you live in America, you should get that by now.
But yeah, and, you know, just to cap off this conversation too, like, really, CNN, and all of the corporate media networks, they are trapped in these loops where they have to behave in a certain way, take a certain tack, based on what their viewership wants to see. And if there are people out there who want to see trolls get called out, I really wish you would focus on more important things and especially support nonprofit journalism.
Yeah.
Like, let's say Trump had instead of CNN had done this to Democracy Now. Do you know what happened? They'd mention it once on one episode, and then that would probably be it. I can't, and then they would go back to talking about things that are actually important.
Like the healthcare bill.
Yeah,
like, man, I know there's a couple other pieces of major legislation sitting around. Oh, right, the active effort to make the internet not protected by Title II.
Yeah,
I mean, important things.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back, and I believe we are going to have a congressional candidate on air in just a few minutes. Dear friend Eponine Garrod. So stay tuned for that, and we've got a lot of other stories to talk about coming up later on the show. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR, your only source for political revolution.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back. Keep your dial locked. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. And we are now joined by Miss Eponine Garrod, who is running, one of 6 candidates currently running to be the Democratic challenger to Fred Upton next year. So let's just start by, Eponine, tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for Congress.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. This is great to get to see where all the magic happens. As you said, my name's Eponine Garrod. I will be 24 at the end of the month, 25 in time to run in November of 2018, which is the constitutional requirement. So I'm young. I'm a female, as you can probably hear, and I'm a progressive Democrat. I entered. Bernie Sanders inspired me to do so. And I'm a scientist. My degree is in chemistry from Michigan Technological University. And I always say, Congress isn't coming to the scientists, so we need to bring the scientists to D.C. Because our world is literally burning to the ground. So we need to do something about that. I never thought I would be a politician. I never really wanted to be a politician, but then after this election and after Bernie came out, it hit me that being greedy and corrupt aren't prerequisites to running for government. It's supposed to be by the people, for the people, and last I checked, I am a people, so I wanted to step up and make sure that I can help represent the voices of the underrepresented.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are at that place. I mean, Bernie Sanders came around. It's like, there are good politicians? I had no idea. So that's great to hear. And so you mentioned being really kind of inspired by the movement, and we'll probably be getting into that in a sec. I'm just going to ask a couple of issue questions, and just full disclosure, everyone out there, in my private life, when I'm not the Hoodrat strategist, I'm a key volunteer / coordinator with Eponine's campaign. So I'm going to let my co-host do a lot of the more inquisitive questions. But there's 2 issues on the show that we really talk about. Try to hit on, especially because the mainstream media doesn't really cover them. And one is military interventionism, the other is voting rights and election integrity. So I'm just going to hit you on those 2 issues. So starting with, our military budget and our military intervention. Both me and you, the vast majority of our life, we have just been living in a country that's in a state of perpetual warfare. Later on in the show, we're even going to be talking a little bit about how some of our resources, money, weapons was funneled into terrorist groups in Syria like Al-Qaeda. What is your stance on this sort of perpetual war on terror? It's something very few Congress people touch. I could probably count them on one hand. People like Tulsi Gabbard, Rand Paul. Do you have a firm, anti-war, anti-interventionist stance, and how do you see yourself, fighting for that issue if and when you are elected to Congress?
Absolutely. So one of the things I like to say is that diplomacy isn't just a board game. It's something that we can try to do with other countries. Our defense spending is through the roof. It's outrageous. There's no doubt that we need to have a defense budget. We need to have a military, but they don't need to be our first go-to every single time. There's going to be situations where we need them, and I wish that wasn't the case. I am a huge proponent of peace. I would like to see a world with no war, but in a time where that's just not possible right now, I know that it's idealistic. It doesn't mean it's not something we can't strive towards. I fully believe that we need to be working towards that. And when we have situations like we have with North Korea right now, with their intercontinental missile that they have just been testing, the U.S. right now is in a conflict with China about how we should handle this situation. And the U.S.'s first choice is strike, 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 strike back, flex our muscles, show our power. We're going at it from a fully militaristic approach. I don't think that should be our first choice. We need to be trying some other strategies. We need to make sure that we're minimizing risk to the largest amount of people that we can minimize that risk for. So when our defense spending is 7 times larger than it's as large as the next 7 countries' military defense spendings combined. That's huge. That's huge. And you talk about the war on terror. We claim to be fighting a war on terror overseas and out of our own country. Well, we're waging our own war on terror on ourselves. On ourselves, we're shooting each other day in and day out. Our children are starving because we're not funding the programs that can feed them. We're trying to cut their access to reduced and free lunches at schools. We're trying to cut Meals on Wheels for our veterans, many of whom are homeless and out on our streets. That's the real terror to me.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and that's something we talk about a lot about too. You know, if you want to fix the crumbling infrastructure, there's a lot of money sitting over there and a lot of military boondoggles. So here's my second question. So recently, and this has been in the news, we're going to talk about this later on the show, Chris Kobach and his Election Integrity Commission, they're asking for the voter rolls from every single state. Michigan is currently undecided. We don't know if we're going to give that commission that information or not. Now, longtime listeners know that I talk about Chris Kobach a lot. He's like one of my top public enemies. Primarily because he has been instrumental in some of the most devastating voter suppression tactics in recent history. Most particularly, he was the architect of the cross-check voter suppression system, which effectively knocked nearly 50,000 people off the voter rolls here in Michigan, which was larger than Trump's margin of victory. Essentially, Trump won the election because of this voter suppression scheme that primarily targeted African Americans and Latinos. So, there are so many facets to this. There's gerrymandering, there's redistricting, there's voter ID laws that make it more difficult for people to vote. And there's also this cross-check system. However, I have, one of the things I criticize, mainstream Democrats for the most is they have not raised this issue. They are not out there fighting for people's rights to vote. Like John Ossoff just lost down in Georgia. Greg Palast did some really great investigative reporting and basically said he would have won had it not been for that racially biased voter suppression. So as there is this kind of palpable silence from much of the Democratic establishment on this issue, do you see yourself as somebody, is this an issue that you're going to try to bring awareness to, shed light on, and how do you intend to tackle this if you get that congressional seat?
So I actually have a lot to say about this. So I'm just trying to keep all my thoughts in a box so I can get them all to you. That's so important. And actually, Michigan right now with our Secretary of State, she's considering giving partial information to the Trump administration. So call her today, Michiganders, and let her know that you don't want your information shared. That is absolutely a violation of your right to your own information. It's unacceptable that she's even considering it. So I was actually part of the voter recount that Jill Stein tried to do here in Michigan. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful because of these laws and these regulations that are so restrictive. In Kalamazoo County, we didn't find much of any discrepancies at all. 1 or 2 here and there, nothing that were any big red flags. But when you look over in the Detroit area, where we had virtually 50% of the voting population's ballots missing, just gone. Well, the way that Michigan's laws work, if there's a discrepancy, you go with what the original count was. That doesn't make sense to me. If you find a discrepancy, you can't just go with what you found originally. It should be looked into. It should be investigated. And instead, we just had it shut down and we shoved it under the covers. Like, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Detroit doesn't matter is essentially what they said to us. And that goes right down to that racial bias that we're seeing. We know that Detroit is a heavily black populated area. And then we also have a lot of Muslim influence there as well, and a lot of Spanish influence, even here in Kalamazoo. So we need to make sure that when we say we the people, we mean all the people, regardless of religion, skin color, ethnicity, racial background, gender, sexuality, etc., etc. And so one of the things that I'll actually be doing right after I leave your show today is going to the Kalamazoo County Commission, where they are voting on whether or not Kalamazoo County should have an ID, a county-issued government ID that would affect so many of these low-income people, people of color, people who may have run away from home as small children and don't have their original documentation. It's a 400-point system that would allow them to get that documentation. And so then if they're going to be harassed at the ballot, which of course we're going to try to make sure that that's not happening, and that's going to come with making sure that voting laws are clearly posted throughout, making sure that while we're sending out our Get Out the Vote initiatives, we're also including what your rights are. We're sending these mailers already. Why don't we include this pertinent information to let people know, when we know that we have this voter harassment, what they can do about it, whether it's happening to them or they see it happening to others. So this will at least ensure that people have a government ID. Now, I don't think that an ID should be required at all for you to vote. Voting is a right. It's not a privilege. And we've seen that in our country. They have done so much over our history to suppress voters, starting from if you were a white man who owned land, then you could vote. There were 4 of us, yourself included, sitting in our car the other day and realized if we were, back in the early 1800s, only my husband, one of 4 of us in the car, would have been able to vote. And to me, that's unacceptable, because we all have rights and ideas and the fundamental ability to be able to exercise those rights through voting, which in many ways is unfortunately our only voice into our government system, the way that it's set up right now.
All right, thank you so much, Eponine. And I'm going to hand it off to Luke and see if you've got some burning questions for this prospective Upton destroyer. No.
I mean, I'm not really a questions guy, but I've got a couple. So I'm not going to ask what's going to differentiate you from the other 5 candidates shooting for the title to go after Fred. I'm sure that'll get handled one way or the other. So we'll just skip that, and we'll go to what is your plan, your general plan of attack on Fred, because there's a lot to go on. And what do you see as the fundamental issues that are being ignored in this district that you kind of want to hit Upton on?
So one of the things that recently hit national attention was his stance on healthcare. He voted for the AHCA to pass through the House, which was something he originally said he wasn't going to do, and then ultimately, after a secret meeting with Trump, did. And a lot of his constituents, the people in our district, felt betrayed. They felt like completely abandoned. And they shouldn't have, because in my opinion, after looking at his voting record, after looking at the facts, it was the only way he was going to vote, no matter what he said. So something I really want to highlight in this campaign between myself and Upton, should he choose to run again, is that he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. His voting record does not align with the way that he presents himself to his constituents, to us, the citizens of his district. And that's really on virtually every issue. And I've gone through the entire Congress webpage for the year of 2016, every single vote that went through the House. I pulled each and every one of those individually, charted them out, and he votes 100% party line. He's not a middle ground guy like he claims to be, and so he says pretty words. He talks very nicely. But when it comes down to button pushing, he's just not making the cut. And I really want to bring that fact forward to the people, because this feeling of betrayal that they had, well, they only had that because of how national the issue was. And so if they see that he's doing that every single day that he's in Congress, they're not going to be willing to forgive that one time. And when they see that it's not just healthcare, it's education, it's our environment, it's all of the things that affect everybody, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on, he's really pretty destructive to our district. And making that open and available so that nobody else has to go dig and spend hours going through the Congress government webpage, that's something that we really want to try to do.
All right, so far-flung future, fingers crossed, where are the places you look to work with the other side of the aisle on, like big issue items that you can kind of adopt, or at least make part of your ultimate goal, and like as someone who wants to make an impact on Washington?
One of the biggest areas that I would say there's a ton of room for bipartisan work and that we can achieve is with our environment. Everybody, for the most part, agrees that human-induced rapid global warming is something that is happening. So how do we fix it? How do we change it? That's something where there's discrepancy. We all ultimately want the same goal, but we have different pathways. So one of the biggest things that gets brought up when we talk about ending rapid climate change and moving to alternative energies is, what about the coal jobs? What about the people who are working in these non-renewable energy industries? And oftentimes the far right will get accusatory that we don't care about them. We don't care about their jobs. We just want to get rid of them, and we'll just pretend that they don't matter while we're saying others do matter. Well, that's not true, and that's something we can reach hands across the aisle and work on to make sure that these coal workers, the people in the oil industry, they're so knowledgeable. They already understand the energy sector. They already have these skills. They've already done this work. We can absolutely find ways to incorporate them and the existing infrastructure so they don't even have to move. We can definitely find ways to work and make sure that those people are the first people filling our workforce for renewable energy. It's just changing the name and changing what the product is. And the product is going to go from being something that's pushing toxins into our environment and creating an unsustainable lifestyle to something that these workers will be able to tell their grandchildren or even their great-grandchildren down the line that, hey, I was part of this huge change. I was part of what you see in your history books, and we're the reason that the earth is sustainable today, and you can still go see a forest. You can still go in the Great Lakes. So, I mean, that to me is the biggest area where we can reach across the aisle. There's certainly other fields. Education is without a doubt one of them. There's many members of the GOP who don't like what Betsy DeVos is doing. We need to find common ground. We all want our children to be successful, to be able to have vocational options and not just be forced into higher education where they accumulate student debt. We all see these as good end goals. And when I say we all, I generally am excluding the far extremes, as we have to. But the majority of us are looking to make sure that our children are happy and that they'll create a better future for their children. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what humanity is all about, trying to make the world better for the people that come after us. And right now, we're not doing that because we are so stuck on our side of the aisle. So with education, I would like to talk about how we can make our public schools better. And part of that is going to be the funding that's coming into them. We need to make sure that we're allocating appropriate amounts of funding without any racial bias, without any bias towards location, rural or city. And we need to make sure that, private schools don't feel threatened. They have a right to exist. Absolutely. That's a fundamental part of democracy. Same with charter schools. And so we need to have those conversations where we're not coming across as wanting to destroy anything private or charter, only public. No, but we need to make sure that our public schools are being taken care of as well.
How is your science background, your background in science, how do you feel that as like a weight in what will impact your decisions? Do you hope that, are you hoping to maybe change the culture of Washington a little bit? Because it seems to me that, because I agree with the idea that we need more scientists, we need more teachers, we need more anybody but Fortune 500 CEO businessmen in the decision-making positions in our government. We need that diversity in the spectrum of life experience in order to actually do that. Do you hope that maybe if you do win, you can help sort of change the culture of Washington itself to be more inclusive?
Definitely. So here's what I think is so important about being a scientist and being a good scientist, because there are different brands of scientists. To be a good scientist, you don't have to have a degree, although it certainly helps in some cases. You have to be a truth seeker. And what that means is you have to be willing to take the facts as they come without wanting or hoping for a result, because that will bias your path to finding what the truth is at the end. And right now we have so many people in Washington, especially, who are hoping for a certain outcome. They're demanding a certain outcome. And then they're twisting the facts to get to there, and they're creating this pseudoscience. That's where we're getting these alternative facts from. Because you can take data and you can manipulate it to say whatever you want, ultimately, by leaving bits and pieces out here and there. And that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into this, and even if I don't like the answer at the other end, even if it doesn't agree with my personal opinion, I think a great example of this is hunting. I'm a vegetarian. I have been since I was like 12 years old. I don't even kill mosquitoes. I'm really a pacifist when it comes to animals and animal life. My own moral obligation is that I will never hunt. I will never be a hunter. But that doesn't mean that I get to strip that right away from others. And so I can look at this from a scientific standpoint and from a constitutional standpoint. The Constitution is kind of, in a way, the truth-seeking reference standard that we get to compare to. It's our control to see where we are in the moral spectrum of government. And so it is not my right to take hunting away from people, but it is my right to make sure that it's being done sustainably, that it's being done with the animal's interests also in mind. I think that one thing Fred Upton and I agree on is not allowing hunters to be able to go into a mama bear's den and shoot all the cubs and the mama right then and there. That, I think, is something that we can have some regulation on. We need to make sure that our ecosystems are staying intact while still allowing this right, whether I agree with it or not. And that's something that a scientist has to do. Sometimes you're going to have outcomes that you don't agree with, and you just have to accept that this is where the facts are. And if there's another pathway that you can ultimately come to, what can you do to get there? How can you improve things to make them better? And sometimes you're not going to be able to find that out. That's why we have experts from so many different fields. To have somebody come in and say that they can change everything on an individual level is ludicrous. You have to be willing to accept help from others. You have to be willing to do peer-reviewed research. There's another science thing. You have to be able to talk with one another and take your different opinions and ideas and findings and combine them together. And then are they repeatable? Can you do it again and again and again? If so, that's great. That's good news. What happens if you change one little thing? There's so many different variables, and that's in our government as well. So anytime that we're trying to push for something like HR 676, Medicare for all, I am fully in support of that. Do I think that's going to be the end all? No. I think we're going to get to it. We're going to find what works. We're going to find what doesn't. And we're going to push forward to make it even better. And we need to do that with the scientific method in mind, not with what does Eponine want in mind? What does the Hoodrat strategist want in mind? It has to be, what is the data showing us, and how can we incorporate data with humanity? Because we do have that moral obligation as humans to take care of each other also. And then what is the conclusion that we can draw from that? And that's something, I'm a very persistent person. Some have referred to me as annoying at times because I refuse to just sit back and pretend that things aren't happening, to pretend that problems aren't there. That's not what I'm going to do. So if I'm lucky, if I am fortunate enough to be able to represent my district in Washington, I won't just be sitting there pushing my button. I won't just be there doing my own little scientific journey to make right choices. I'm going to be involving everybody, whether they want to be involved or not. And at the end of the day, I think, hopefully, that can help change the culture of DC, even just a tiny bit. That would mean a world of difference to me.
That would be pretty amazing to actually have evidence-based policies.
Man.
Oh my gosh.
Those are some great answers to some pretty terrible questions.
Well, I got a couple more too. If we want to let's see. It's about how much time do you got, Epi?
Not until 6:30.
All right. Okay.
Well, it is the top of the hour.
All right. So we're going to take a quick little break, and when we come back, talk a little bit about some political strategy stuff. So keep your dial locked. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Do you love your mother? What about your country? How about independent radio? Do your patriotic duty and apply to be a wider DJ. It's simple. Just come down to the wider studios in the Font Student Services building and fill out an application. We'll get you on air as long as you aren't crazy. At least not as crazy as us.
Support for Wider FM comes from Pedal Bicycles, now with 2 locations in downtown Kalamazoo and Portage. Pedal Bicycles has the right bike for every Kalamazoo rider, whether you're blazing the trails, cruising the streets, or just getting off the training wheels. To keep your ride running smooth, Pedal Bicycles offers multiple levels of repair services, anything from a quick tune-up to a complete overhaul. And to keep you safe and looking fly, Pedal Bicycles has all of the gear and apparel you'll need. To discover your spin within, head to 185 Romans Road in Portage, 611 West Michigan Avenue in downtown Kalamazoo, or pedalbicycle.com. Thanks, Pedal Bicycle, for supporting sustainable transportation, Buns of Steel, and Radio Evolution.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. It's a weekly show where we talk about politics, local activism, political strategy, and calling out the establishment's BS. We are joined today with congressional candidate Eponine Garrod. She is in the running to be the Democratic challenger to Fred Upton's seat. And we were just in the middle of a pretty great interview. We were just talking about she's also known as DJ Narcolepsy. But yeah.
Everybody's got to have that fun fact, yo.
Oh yeah. But seriously. So Here's kind of the elephant in the room that, I don't hear a lot of Democratic candidates talk about, or even, a lot of people riding the Bernie wave, which is the Democrats have a really huge trust problem right now. And a lot of polling, Trump polls around 35% approval. Democrats have been teetering around 33%. So, unfortunately, usually in a time where you'll see a lot of opposition to an unpopular sitting president, that will strengthen the opposition party. We haven't really seen that. And I feel like a lot of that ties back into trust issues with not only what happened in the primary last year, but also neoliberalism and those kind of economic policies that a lot of people feel like they've been kind of thrown under the bus, or they've been told one thing and then another thing has happened. So in order to mobilize those people who don't trust the Democratic Party, get those essential, typical non-voters who are usually like too apathetic or cynical about the political system to vote. What is going to be your plan to, elevate yourself and kind of reestablish that trust?
One of the things that our campaign pushes regularly is that while we are running with the Democratic Party, we're running as progressive Democrats. I'm a progressive Democrat, and progressive to me means, in as short of words as possible, people over party and people over profit, always. And so for some establishment Democrats especially, that scares them. People over party, that means that you could leave if we're not behaving, that the people that you draw out might not all be Democrats 100% always and forever. Well, yeah, because politics isn't supposed to be a label. Politics is supposed to be the people deciding what is best for them and then bringing that to their government by bringing themselves to their government. A lot of people in favor of small government to have freer people, that baffles me, because in order to have freer people, I think we need more representation in our government, and that's ultimately going to mean expanded government because we're bringing more people into the equation so we can have more freedom and more representation. So one of our biggest strategies is knock every door. If it has a Trump flag, if it has a Confederate flag, I mean, we've gone past lawnmowers that have Trump bumper stickers all over them. We're still going to talk to these people because, again, it's not, oh, you're a Republican? Well, I can't be around you. Oh, you're a Democrat? I don't want to talk to you. Because the seat that I'm trying to run for, I'm not running to just represent Democrats. I'm running to represent the 6th Congressional District of Michigan, and that's everybody that lives in it. And to the best of my ability to try to make the majority of people happy and to make sure that they are getting their self-interest the way that they want it. And being that liaison from the 6th District to D.C. and then from D.C. back. So whatever side of the aisle you consider yourself on, I consider you a human being. I consider you a person with feelings and passion and ideas, and I want to talk to you about them, and I want to hear about them, and I want to hear what issues are troubling you. One of the things our campaign is striving to do is to not go into areas and tell them what they need to be better and to be happier, but to listen and hear, because you already know what's going to make you happier and what's going to make your life more fulfilling that the government can do to help. So we want to hear. We want you to tell us, because right now we have too many people telling you what you should do. And that's not what we are about. We are about people first, always. So yeah, there's a lot of distrust in the Democrat Party, especially when we saw Bernie and Hillary in the DNC. There's no doubt there was rigging going on. There were emails being hacked. There was a whole slew of just pure political craziness. And that led to a lot of distrust. I don't trust the Democrats. That's why I'm running to be with the Democrats. We need to have people with integrity in the party and people that are willing to be more than just a label, to be more than just a Democrat. You have to be willing to be what the party becomes based on the people in it. And so we have to be in it to make any kind of change. So that's where I dem-entered, and a lot of the people on my team dem-entered. We came into the Democratic Party to be part of the resistance from the inside. And it's not that the Democratic values don't align with ours. For the most part, they generally do. It's how these values are enacted and the methods that are being used to get to them. Those are the things that we tend not to agree with. You know, I've even had local county chairs tell me that they don't think someone my age can win, solely based on my age. Whereas when I look at the Constitution and I look at the Declaration of Independence and I look at history shows we've had people younger than me, younger than constitutionally allowed in our Congress. It's happened already. And I don't think that's very democratic to just say you can't because of your age. Our government is by the people, for the people. And I've even had some of the elders of our community come to me and tell me age is just a number, which is great because that's usually what I'm saying to the elder community. So to have it come back, that's fantastic. And that's what I see as the Democratic Party. The people looking out for each other. Not those that sit at the top of the cash pile, not those that sit at the top of the DNC telling us what being a Democrat means. It's us telling them what being a Democrat means.
So, by the way, that's an excellent answer. And, by the way, millennials, whatever side of the political aisle you're on, like they're...
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to say, like, dear Democrats, dear Democratic Party, if you would like young people to vote for you, maybe instead of pandering to them through god awful memes, maybe you should run people who are in the literal largest voting bloc in the country.
Pro tip. Yeah.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young people getting involved now, so maybe y'all should not turn your noses up at them straight up because they're young and, quote, don't know what they're doing. Like, this is the first generation raised in the information age. We know what we're about. So, like, people like Eponine are not coming in with an empty hand here. So I think it's pretty great that we have more people within this voting, within that, our generation, getting into it. That way, even on a local level, it means that less of the decision makers are 2 generations, 3 generations older than the people who are most affected by the policy that is being made.
So, here's a question regarding, your strategy, not only for the primary, but for the general election, which, the conventional wisdom that I've seen out of kind of the 6th district is, if you want to win as a Democrat, which we haven't had a Democratic congressman ever, I don't think. Nope. That, you have to just, galvanize everybody in the city to go vote, but not really work very hard in the rural areas. And, having worked on previous campaigns, this is something I've seen firsthand. Now, there's a kind of idea out there more nationally that you have to kind of triangulate. So, you saw this with like Ossoff and some other more centrist Dems running in red areas where, you leave certain things off the table, like you don't talk about Black Lives Matter. You don't talk about women's health issues. Now, where do you see a strategy that is inclusive of all of those important, social justice issues? And furthermore, and this is something that, Bernie had a lot of success with, was tying those struggles together. How the struggle of, a poor white rural farmer is really not all that different from like, a poor black person on the north side. So like, how would your campaign kind of address that?
Yeah, I think that if you're willing to hide truths or provide half-truths to the people of your district to get a vote, you shouldn't be running. You need to be willing to go all in. You need to have trust that the people you're talking to are intelligent people who have ideas and are willing to engage in a discussion level and not just immediately jump to an argument. One of my own sisters is a Trump supporter. She voted for Trump. And that was a little bit hard to swallow at first, but she's my sister. I know her and I love her and I care about her. And I know that while she voted for Trump, she's not inherently a racist person. She's not inherently a hateful person. She would do pretty much anything for somebody in need, no matter what color or religion they were. But she hasn't had anybody come up to her and tell her and educate her on the things that she's learned through being a privileged white woman, and how to unlearn them. And sometimes that's scary. Sometimes it's really, really hard to be told you're wrong. So the way that we need to do it is we're not going to come up to somebody and just say, hey, you're wrong, take down that Trump flag. That's not going to win anybody over. That's not going to make you any friends. But what we can do is we can bring our platform to the people in the rural areas as well. We've actually spent more time in the rural areas so far than the city areas with our campaign. And we can say, hey, here's our perspective on these things. Can you share with us your perspective? Where can we find the differences and where can we find the common ground? And as long as we're willing to find that common ground together, people are going to be willing to live with some of the differences, knowing that there's somebody there in their government who they can agree with on, 75, 80% of the issues. But to hide them from people, to leave things out, that's not very transparent or ethical, in my personal opinion, and it's something we won't be doing on this campaign. We're going to have a clear, consistent message no matter what area we're in. We may change some of our vocabulary to be... So if I'm in Kalamazoo, I can come right out and jump on stage and say, Black Lives Matter. Great, people are going to take that okay. If I'm in rural Bangor, I probably don't want to get on the stage and just say Black Lives Matter. But what I can do is I can say, hey, look at how many black people are being killed by our cops while they're unarmed, while they're following the laws, while they're doing what they're supposed to, while they're legal firearm carrying individuals. This is not right. We need to make sure that their rights are being represented as well. And if someone's going to yell back, Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, we can say, where does Black Lives Matter say that they don't? And with that privilege that comes with the color of my skin, I'm able to do that. Recently, we were in St. Joseph County, and I had everybody there take a moment of silence for Philando. This was just after his murderer had been acquitted of his murder. And that's something that we have to acknowledge. I have to acknowledge as a white person. I can go in and do that. I can go in and make these mostly middle-aged to older white people take a moment of silence for somebody that they might not care about. They might see as a thug because of the media that they watch. And so that's what I mean when I say we might change our vocabulary in some places, but the message will always be the same.
Oh, wonderful. So, following up, kind of want to pick your brain about what your economic plan might be. Now, my big critique with, both, even with Bernie Sanders, was this idea that, the problem is that globalization has outsourced all of these manufacturing jobs. And that is what has wrought a lot of the devastation. But the idea that the solution is about bringing manufacturing back. Now, in a lot of ways, what hardly gets talked about is automation. And these industries, as technology develops, we're going to see automation happen in more and more industries, a lot of industries that people never thought would be automated. So does your economic plan, as far as jobs go, does it take this into account? Does it understand that we might really need to look outside the box as far as fostering our local economy and not just go back to just bring those manufacturing jobs back?
Absolutely. As Trump might say about healthcare, I will say about our economy, it's complicated. Duh. And it's not something that can just be cut and dry, black and white. It's going to take a variety of different strategies working together and interlaying, and automation is coming. I mean, we're advancing technologically, and that's just the name of the game, all the way back from the Stone Age to the Brass Age to the Industrial Revolution. It continues. We continue to grow and learn, and we make our lives easier with this automation. So we're going to be doing it. The goal is that we can't leave humans behind to make machines go ahead, if you know what I mean here. So let's look at self-driving cars, for example. I think that's one of the biggest fears coming to mind right now is self-driving cars. Well, what does that do for taxi drivers? What does that do for Uber and Lyft drivers? What does that do for bus drivers? What's going to happen to these people? And then also, what will that do to the auto industry itself? What will it do for manufacturers that maybe can't keep up with that technology? Will it put them out of business? What will happen to all of those workers? How will this affect union rights? There's a lot of questions that need answers. And again, not to continue to drive the same nail into the ground, but I think that's where the scientific method is going to come in, and that's where we really have to make sure that we're not just approaching this with the idea that this self-driving car is it, and that's only it, and we're going to just do whatever we have to do to get there and leave whoever we want to leave behind and just leave them to hang to dry. We have to say, okay, well, we are going to get to a self-driving car because that's the way that technology advances, and the fact that it's there, it's going to happen, it is inevitable. How can we make sure that we're taking care of our workers, of our people at the same time? So as far as that goes with our economy will crumble if we forget to bring these people with it. Our economy it's not going to thrive on self-driving cars. It's not going to thrive on robots and machines. It thrives on people. A car isn't going to go to a gas station and fill up on its own. It can't pay for it. So we have to make sure that we understand that there's this, I would call it, to throw some biology in here, I'm not a biologist, but it's a symbiotic relationship. I know that's related to parasites, which grosses some people out, but with a symbiotic relationship, there's a host and a parasite, but they coexist on each other. They help each other. And I think of our economy almost as a symbiotic relationship with us as humans. We all hate spending money, but we like to have all of these resources available and accessible to us, and we only get that by putting the money that we earn from working back into our economy. And with the self-driving cars and just technology advancement in general, there are places for people, and we just have to make sure that we're finding them, that we're including them, and then making sure that the money comes along. And the money can come from places that we weren't necessarily expecting either. One of the things that I really would want to push towards is the Robin Hood tax, which is basically it's a tax on Wall Street on these millions of transactions that are happening in nanoseconds, literally nanoseconds, and taxing those transactions that are being done really by the 1% would allow so much more money into our economy that we would be able to ensure that as technology advances, our workers are getting the proper training at no cost to them to be able to continue to work with these advancements. Technology still breaks down. It still needs people at the end of the day to be able to repair it, to be able to troubleshoot. You know, I don't think we've hit an AI point yet where the human brain doesn't come out ahead. Sometimes you just need your good old gut and intuition, and a robot's never going to be able to do that.
I don't think I will live to see the day of the robot plumber myself. So we've got a few minutes left. There's so much we could really talk about. And, you know, if anyone ever wants to pick Eponine's brain, you've got a Facebook page and a website, right?
We have a Facebook, a website, a Twitter, a Snapchat, an Instagram, and an email.
And is that Eponine for the house?
It's Garrod, Garrod for the house. On Facebook, it's FOR. On the website, it's the number 4. Because I did it myself, and I'm not a web designer either.
All right, so one of the core issues that mobilized not only Bernie Sanders' revolution, but a lot of the people who ended up voting for Donald Trump was this idea that our political system is innately corrupt and that we have a serious problem with money in politics. Now, you know, Bernie did it by getting small $27 donations. Trump was able to told people, well, I'm rich already, so I can't be bought. Until he invited all of his friends to be in his cabinet, all of his rich friends. So this is a systemic problem. It's really, I call it the gatekeeping issue that keeps all of our other issues locked behind the doors. Talking about racism, you know, prison industrial complex. It's the reason why our military budget's so bloated. It's, you know, why we have runaway climate change, immigration. Really, all of it goes back towards, you know, lobbyists and also, you know, campaign funds and this sort of quid pro quo of, you know, we will scratch your back so sometime down the line you can scratch ours. It's the fundamental reason we're really in the mess that we are now. Now, as somebody running, do you see that as... do you also see that as the core issue? And also, how would you seek to take that on and, as somebody in Congress? And more in the short term, what is going to be your fundraising model as a congressional candidate? And are there sources that you absolutely will not take money from?
It's definitely a huge issue, and it is one of those root causes that we really need to dig down and weed out. And so, at least with our campaign, we are doing grassroots donations. I would love to say that we can do donations as small as $27 like Bernie did, and we can if we get this campaign nationwide. We do have to acknowledge that we're working with a smaller group of people. We don't have to raise as much money as Bernie did, but we do still need to have funds. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a necessary evil. I don't think we need the full $2 million that people are saying that we need. I think that with a little good elbow grease and some door knocking, we can cut that down dramatically. But we do still need to be able to put out events. We need to be able to put out fundraisers, and we are trying to put a lot of that money back into our county, into our district. We'll be having a fundraising concert in Bangor on August 18th. You can find that event on Facebook. And we're making tickets very accessible, $10 a person, $30 max for a family. And then you'll be able to come out and have a good time and enjoy it. And it's all local. It's a local amphitheater. We'll have local food. And those are the things that we really want to try to incorporate back into our district. And we think that that will help people be willing to put money into our campaign so that it's not just disappearing. We had Paul Clements this last election raise $1 million and not win a single county out of the 6. That's concerning to me as a citizen of this district. Where did that money go? How was it used if not to win even a single county? So we are going to be grassroots, and grassroots means nothing from super PACs and nothing from large corporations. PACs will be, we'll look at them on a case-by-case basis because a PAC is inherently not a bad thing. It depends who the money is coming from. So some small local organizations can have PACs, and they can be doing great things in the community that align with our values, and we'll accept money from them. But we're not going to accept money from PACs that get their money by abusing people overseas or in our country to make their profit, that don't take care of their workers, that don't want the same things that are good for people versus corporations. We're not going to be taking their money. And if they send it to us, we'll send it back. And if they won't take it back, we'll donate it to a charity, preferably something that maybe is the antithesis to whatever they're trying to do that's negative to our community. So what we can do in Congress in the long run is it would be pretty simple to introduce some basic legislation to forbid candidates from being able to take money from corporations, or even to forbid corporations from donating to candidates in the first place, especially these large entities like the Koch brothers, for example. They should not be allowed to buy an election, or at the very least, by introducing this legislation, we can see the pushback, we can see the fight, and we can maybe drag some of that nastiness up to the surface to really see it for what it is, which is corporations buying our elections. You see that with people saying that corporations are people too, but they're not. They're corporations, and they don't have the same right or the same say in our government that we as individuals should. I'm nobody special. I'm literally just a person off the streets of Michigan who gives a crap. I hope I'm allowed to say that.
Yep, that FCC's all right with crap.
Okay,
so, yeah.
All right. I do, and so we're not just going to be out there taking money to buy votes, to be able to scratch each other's back. It's not what we are about. And Trump saying that he's already too rich to be bought out. No. I've been poor enough to not be bought out because I know what's at stake. I know what people have to lose. Even when they feel that they have nothing left to lose, there is still basic pride and humanity that the government will try to strip away from them. And to be able to accept money from companies and individuals willing to do that, that's just not going to fly for this campaign.
Oh, great to hear. It's almost 6:30. I don't know if you have time for one more or...
Sure, let's do one more.
Okay. So, you said this at the beginning. One of your core issues is climate change. So, here in the 6th District, what would you do? Well, one, just how imminent do you feel that the scale of this threat is? What can you do, and the rest of the 6th District really do, to combat this very large existential threat, and looking further ahead down the line, as a scientist and someone who would be a representative, we've got a situation in the coming decades where Michigan's particular climate is going to be in a relatively safe zone when some of the worst climate outcomes are occurring on the East Coast, coastal cities, in the Midwest. It is quite possible we will end up being a kind of center for climate refugees. And I'd like to know just what can we do now to start preparing for that? And will that be part of what you'll be working on if elected to Congress?
So let me start with how imminent of a threat it is. Very imminent. It's happening right now. So it's something that we've been pushing the brakes on for too long in terms of doing something about it, and now we need to step on the gas. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a situation that's out of control and not know what to do anymore. We'll be past the point of no return. Right now, we are walking that line. So we need to run away from it as fast as possible. In terms of... So actually, let me go to your final question, and then I'll come back to what we can do as a district and as individuals. As far as Michigan, you're right. We would be a pretty relatively safe place in terms of our geographical location and the natural resources around us. We have some natural protection, and we absolutely would be a place of refuge for climate refugees, people fleeing from these areas where the earth has abandoned them because we abandoned it. And so we need to some people, the only way we can say this is look at it selfishly. We have people in the 6th District who are already tired of tourists coming in. They're sick of their communities being overtaken with Airbnbs. They miss the good old days when you knew everybody in your neighborhood and everybody in your neighborhood knew you. And so if we allow the rest of the world to destroy itself and all come to Michigan, well, that's only going to get 1,000 times worse. So if we want to keep our mitten and be able to proudly say, I'm a Michigander, and know that that's not something everybody gets to say, well, we got to look out for everybody else too. It's a two-way street. We can't just take care of ourselves and not the people around us, because we're a team, we're a country, we're a planet. We are the earth. In our little tiny dot in Michigan, we're part of a bigger connection throughout the entire universe, really. So by taking care of others, we are ultimately taking care of ourselves too. So what can we do? How can we make this better? There's all this fear out there from both sides, fear-mongering from both sides. And so how can we logically and rationally look at this? Well, we can start really small. There's tons of things that we can do on a very, very small scale as individuals that not going to be hugely impactful. But at this point, any little bit counts. Every single little bit counts. So one of the things I really recommend people start looking into and do if they're able is composting. It's something that's relatively small. It doesn't take up a lot of area. Even just, a jar that you get from the dollar store or from a garage sale, you can use as a small compost. Or if you have backyard space that you can use as well. It's pretty simple, and that helps cut down on landfill waste. And it brings nutrients back into the environment. And if you have any farmers nearby, they might be willing to use that compost to be able to grow and fertilize their crops. So it's kind of a win-win circle of refuge right there. Another thing that you can try to do is carpool or take public transport. The less emissions that we're putting out into the world, the better. My husband and I, we each have a car. Sometimes that's necessary. But as much as possible, even if it's only a little bit inconvenient, we will carpool. For example, I think he's waiting outside in the parking lot right now. It's a little inconvenient to him. Sorry, babe. But we're cutting down on emissions by doing that, since we're going to the same place afterwards. Get to know your public transportation system, not only to help the environment, but to help make it better for the people that rely on it. The more voices that are saying we need this change, then the more likely people are to listen, especially if you're coming from a place of privilege, which often includes white skin and money, and often being a man. So if we don't have these people riding the public transportation system, seeing where the faults are, we're not going to see change as quickly. So it's good for the environment and for your community. On a larger scale, something our district can definitely do. We have all this gorgeous water around us. We have so many lakes. So we get a lot of wind and we get a lot of sun. And we can absolutely be incorporating solar energy and wind energy and fueling that way. We can stop using oil and start electrifying. If we had electric trolleys zooming around the Kalamazoo area instead of big gassy buses, it'd be, not only would it be quirky and fun and maybe draw more people into our community, but it would be better for our earth too. So I would like to see Michigan, especially Southwest Michigan, but Michigan as a whole, strive to be carbon neutral. Even better, carbon negative. It is possible. Some places have been doing that. And what that means is that we're reducing as many carbon emissions as we're putting out. So we're not really altering our ecosystem in any way. We're cleaning up all our trash. So those are some of the big key points that I would like to see Michigan and Southwest Michigan strive towards. Oh, one more thing too. Really easy, reusable shopping bags. Every shopping bag that you use, every plastic one, it's likely just going to end up in a landfill. I know mine do, unfortunately. I use them to scoop my cat's litter into. I should be using something different, and I will be. Thank you I've now said that, so I should do it. So reusable shopping bags as much as possible. And then even the tiniest things, like don't use your plastic drinking straw. Those end up in the landfills too, and they don't break down. They just sit there forever. So there's so many little tiny things. I could go on. I won't.
All right, Epi, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. All
right. And give them heck down there at the county commission. Shout out to everybody out there. The final vote on the county ID is tonight, and we've covered that on the show several times before. So we will talk on the show. Hopefully, knock on wood, we're expecting a positive outcome. So, all right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up, talk about a few more news stories, and call out some more of the establishment's shenanigans. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR. Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
WIDR would like to remind you to please drive safely. Drunk driving not only puts your life in danger, but the lives of others as well. If you find yourself stranded somewhere, consider calling Drive Safe Kalamazoo, phoning a friend, or having an Uber pick you up. Thank you for listening.
This is an open slot in the wider clock and could be filled with an underwriting announcement for your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the support page.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. You're listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So we're going to talk about the Democrats. Yeah. We just had a wonderful driven woman on here running for the Democratic Party. Now we're going to take shots. Yeah, there's like, well, it's a good counterpoint. It's like, here's the good one, and here's the
here's the one that wants to do right by people. Here are the ones that don't give a crap about you.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna quickly. This is just kind of well, it's not fun, but it's
a little fun.
It's interesting. So, right now the political rhetoric it's at a fever pitch. And congressional Democrats are like, join the resistance. This is awful.
Hashtag resist.
Resist.
Hashtag resist.
Yeah.
That's what the kids do these days, right? Hashtags.
Yeah. So there's a story that's been floating around. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump had a big 4th of July party. And, it's the left and the right. They all have these power players that they always blame. For us, we're always up on Charles Koch, and the right wing loves talking about George Soros, and there's a list going around of these bigwigs who are all at this party, and yeah, it's like basically literally Chuck Schumer was there. George Soros, Charles Koch, they're all just laughing it up and drinking champagne.
Rubbing elbows.
And yeah, so, please, join the resistance, but don't look to people like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi to lead said resistance because, as George Carlin once said, it's a big club and we ain't in it.
It's true.
Yep.
I'm sorry. It's one of those things when Nancy Pelosi goes on about resistance. I'm like, Nancy Pelosi, you don't want to push a single payer healthcare system. You can go away.
Please go away, man. Oh man. Just to really illustrate this in a more concrete way than just a bunch of billionaires at a party. This is an article from The Intercept that I found really interesting. And this is Lee Fang. He published this on the 23rd of June. And it's prominent Democratic fundraisers realigned to lobby for Trump's agenda. And I'm gonna pick a couple of things from this article to touch on as examples. So it posits, he writes, Republican lobbyists are more in demand, but liberal lobbyists are doing brisk business that has them reaching out to fellow Democrats to endorse or at least tamp down vocal opposition to Trump agenda items. The net neutrality debate, which we were actually talking about earlier before the show started, is a case in point. The biggest fundraisers for the Clinton campaign, Democratic lobbyists such as Ingrid Duran, Vincent Roberti, Steve Elmendorf, Al Matur, and Archie Siddiqui, are now lobbying on behalf of AT&T, Verizon, or Comcast on net neutrality. These companies dominate the telecom industry, which is working with the Trump administration to unwind one of President Barack Obama's biggest accomplishments. Although I would add to that, his administration was kind of lukewarm on the whole net neutrality thing, and SOPA, which is the Stop Online Piracy Act, which was in 2013-14. That was really geared towards. That was the first really big attack on net neutrality.
Sopa Pipa.
Yep. And who stopped that? Activists. Yeah.
The internet.
Man, nobody ever gives credit where credit is due. It's a bunch of people got really mad and wrote a bunch of letters and phone calls.
It's almost like when you shout. It's almost like when you shout at your representatives loud enough, they actually listen to you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
it works. Except when it doesn't. I.e., thanks, Trump appointee to the head of the FCC. You jerk.
Yeah. And talking more specifically on this net neutrality thing. So, Ajit Pai, he's been appointed by Trump. He's a former Trump attorney to be the chairman of the FCC. and they're attempting to roll back the Title II reclassification and have companies simply voluntarily consigned to net neutrality instead of it being a hard and fast rule and freedom.
Which is exactly what they won't do if there's not a requirement.
And this Moteur fellow, who he raised nearly $100,000 for the Clinton campaign, and now he's a lobbyist who says, well, he was a lobbyist then too, but he is currently a lobbyist who's said the industry supports strong consumer protection rules, but Title II is an over-the-top, archaic regulatory framework. Just deregulate it, which is... Isn't that something
regulations are bad?
Yeah.
All regulations all the time are bad, and we should live in an unregulated, free society that, doesn't care if there's lead in your water.
And please keep in mind, this is the Democratic lobbyist, not somebody from the Freedom Caucus or somebody hired by the Koch brothers.
Yes, this is where people will point at Democrats and Republicans and go, well, they're both the same. And yes, on this point they are, because the only motivating factor here is money. Literally, this is their job. This is what they are paid to do. So it really just comes down to that gatekeeper issue of money in politics.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the gatekeeper issue, and as long as Democrats keep that off of their main punching points, they're not going to get anywhere with people further to the left with them, or of them. Excuse me.
Yeah,
it's just not going to happen.
No, and
then they'll whine and complain when they lose yet another national campaign because not enough people got in line, or candidate X or reason Y spoiled it for us. Any reason to really not analyze the dude, or any excuse to deflect from any kind of self-reflection.
Yeah,
which is the entirety of what I've been seeing in the months since the election is constant deflection, constant goalpost moving, constant whataboutisms.
Yeah.
Like every single time any kind of criticism, like legitimate, sustainable criticism about the Democratic Party from the left. Well, why are you criticizing us? We're the left too.
Yeah,
which is,
I mean, that's what this whole fracture was last year, which was like, you gotta walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk. And this is exactly a case of, everything we've complained about with the Democratic Party, that, they will, in public decry the Republicans and use the fact that they're better than them as basically their only political strategy. But behind closed doors, or at least in a realm that doesn't have as much public scrutiny, their operatives will go out and support these ideologically conservative, Republican, and not democratic policies and ideas. And that matters. People have both the desire, intent, and ability to pay attention to this stuff right now. I don't think the Democratic Party is understood smartphones yet that we can fact check.
I really don't think they have either, because this is the exact criticism of Hillary Clinton that has been beaten, that was used the entire time through the primary, through the general. This is the exact criticism of pandering, of lip service to liberal agendas, to democratic agendas, and then behind closed doors, in the back channels of democracy where all the money flows, they're relying on the same strategies the Republicans are using. They're relying on large donors. They're relying on super PAC and lobbyist money to drive campaigns. They've decided that, well, like, it's a fact of life that money is needed to run a campaign. No one is going to deny that, but it's one of the reasons why we need strict regulation on campaign contributions.
Campaign finance laws.
And like, we need campaign finance laws to help avoid this. Because really, people are going to push an agenda one way or the other. But when that agenda, like, when the money that supplies that agenda flows one way, you're going to go that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I mean, this goes into a much deeper issue with money in politics, but even if you don't have somebody who, like, plays, you know, you can have somebody going into Congress who actually does want to help people. You know, we're not saying, like, you can't just characterize it as like, oh, they're all just a bunch of, like, sociopaths or whatever.
Because they're absolutely not.
Because that's the way the system is. They have to pay attention. They have to raise that money to win those elections, and then they have to capitulate to those interests in order to maintain that money. And
I get at least 3 emails a day from the Democratic Party asking me to donate.
Yeah.
At least 3.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, that needs, like, we need major structural reform to get this back in control. You know, there's always been a level of corruption in our government, but it has just gone completely off the rails in the last several decades. Yeah, it's acceptable.
It's acceptable.
You know, acceptable to the point where, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that we know, well, not a lot, but a few, who, you know, we could show this article to, and they would just like, why are you getting so mad? This is just how it works. And the problem is, most young people and a lot of the old hippies too, and, you know, a lot of people.
This is just how it works. No, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
That is the fundamental problem. Is this is the way it is working.
Yeah,
like, we need to find a new way to make it work.
Yeah,
because it's not working for so many people.
Yeah, and, you know, money talks. You got to have some ideological consistency from, you know, where your money comes from or what your fundraisers do. You know, I'll call this out right now. George Franklin, he's also running in the 6th district, and he donated a bunch of money to Fred Upton in the last round. And, you know, basically he's been called out on that, and he's trying to normalize it, said like, oh, well, I took the advice of someone, Fred. But, you know, you're not running in a vacuum anymore. People, like, your past will follow you, especially with the internet. And, you know, this kind of behavior, you know, they can scoff, they can say only, like, political nerds on the left and right are paying attention to this, but, you know, that information trickles down. And when the Democratic Party already has this trust issue with the left, not only will it enrage progressives and you know, give them, you know, political stumbling blocks in the future, but it also strengthens the assertion by a lot of people on the right that the Democrats don't really have any principles. They don't stand for anything. And frankly, you know, Harry Truman said this, and it rings very true. If you give people a choice between a Democrat in Republicans' clothing and a Republican, they will pick the Republican every time.
Yep. I mean, and we've seen that. We see it over and over and over again. It's actually the go-to Democrat. It's the go-to Democrat strategy in anywhere that isn't heavily populated. They run Republican light people everywhere. John Ossoff was Republican light, and they lost because, wouldn't you know, he didn't go. He wasn't right enough. Yeah. Like this strategic, like the strategy of targeting the ideological middle between Democrat and Republican doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. It hasn't existed in probably 15 years, at least. It doesn't exist anymore. Democrats, like the people who are headlining the Democratic Party, are the moderate Republicans. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And like, please find me, talk to me about this. Like, let's have a discussion so I can tell you what, so I can actually go into it. But it's really hard to not sort of come at it from that viewpoint when you have, like, you don't hear the Democratic Party talking about things the left cares about. You don't hear them talking about the environment. You don't really hear them talking about education until it's under attack. You don't hear them talking about money in politics. You don't hear them talking about our interventionary policies. Like, we've got healthcare.
Yeah.
They're talking about healthcare. They're talking about healthcare a lot. That's cool.
And, you know, if you're talking about getting or flipping Republican votes, you know, let's take it back, like the election last year and Bernie's, you know, cross-partisan appeal had to do.
Yeah, his ability to go into deep red Virginia and have a whole room full of Trump voters applaud him for the whole concept of a single-payer system.
Yeah, and the thing is, his success with those people who may not agree with him ideologically rests on something very simple that I think the Democratic Party has really forgotten about, which is if you genuinely care, people will like that. People will vote for that, even if they don't agree with you on the issues 100% of the time. And based on this behavior, you know, with how they're trying to these Democratic operatives are supporting these motions to dismantle net neutrality. There's Steve Elmendorf, he's a senior advisor in Clinton's 2008 run. He raised $350,000 for her campaign. Well, we all know how horrible the AHCA is, right? Well, he is helping United Health work on issues related to the ACA. And one of their goals, they want to repeal the health insurance industry tax, which is one of the main provisions in the AHCA bill. So when people see this or they hear about this, that tells them, no, Democrats don't care about you. And even some apathetic people or some cynical people on the left would be like, maybe I agree with them more ideologically, but they don't care about me, so why should I bother to vote?
Yep. Especially when you take a look at the demographics of most Democratic voters who are blue-collar, working full-time, working 60 hours a week due to some of our other structural problems and issues. Like, you have a compounding problem as people fall into ever worsening situations, and the party that supposedly says that it's for the people and it's for solving the people's problems and being the people's heavyweight in Washington, and then not back that up, then you're going to have a fundamental disconnect from the people who are most likely to vote for you.
That's absolutely right. And looks like we're running a little low on time. Well, it's 7 o'clock right now. We don't have many rallies and events coming up this week. I usually like to close the show by that, but I will let you know tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. down in Marshall, there is going to be a Medicare for All March. It is going to be March in downtown Marshall. Again, 2:30 p.m. It says they'll meet at the fountain. So it's a Facebook event, Medicare for All March, hosted by Calhoun County for Revolution. So if you are interested, you can find more information there. Anyway, I want to thank all y'all for tuning into the program. I want to thank Eponine for coming on and talking about her campaign. Thank my buddy Luke for coming in and keeping the discussion dynamic. And please join us again next week, where we'll have more BS to call out, I am certain.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It never stops.
So keep it dial locked, and ladies and gentlemen, keep fighting for that revolution solution. Have a good night.